There's also a pretty big amount of responsibility to be put on the GSEs in my mind. And again, I think Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are getting a tremendous amount of blame, and even Congress is getting a tremendous amount of blame for facilitating Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to be a very large purchaser of subprime paper, not realizing that purchasing the subprime paper would encourage the banks and mortgage brokers to generate subprime paper and to find ways to do so. Creative financing, lowering risk cutoffs, qualifying people without income verification, 0% amortization loans, just finagling ways and coming up with creative mortgage loans in order to qualify people for loans, and just then turning around, originating and selling those loans. Now, if you think about it, if you're a seller of something, you're going to want to try and get the highest price you can for something. Thus the saying, let the buyer beware. So really the buyer of these assets ultimately is responsible, but there's also a pretty big piece here in the government-sponsored entities that Congress encouraged to move in this market in order to get a worthy goal done. And it is a worthy goal in society to move people into housing and out of rental units so that they actually can share in what we call the American dream, can share in equity in their homes so that they actually grow wealth. The problem with this, and with any lending, is that if you're premature in lending money and qualifying people who aren't quite ready, you're actually doing them a major disservice. And if you look at this market chain from a moral standpoint, we've done a lot of people a major disservice. The banks have a measure to blame because they're originating loans that they would never want to keep on books. They're originating loans that they would never, in their right mind, take into their own balance sheet. And you know what? Eventually they had to. Government-sponsored entities, which is a clever entity that the government created in order to facilitate the mortgage market and ultimately used as a tool to get lower-income people into housing, has also done them a major disservice by allowing people to be qualified for credit when they weren't quite ready, and actually put them back many years from being able to do it again. So that, in my mind, is a major disservice. The investment banks, who are also in here in this area, were turning around and selling pretty complex instruments to investors, and in some ways maybe pulling some wool over eyes because of the complexity. It's difficult for the average, even fund manager, to spend the kind of time to really understand the assets. So being able to say, hey, this is going to give you this kind of return, it's great stuff, just buy it. It's rated good, and maybe selling some of a bit of a bill of goods to investors in order to make money. Again, they're selling things that they wouldn't want to keep on their books, and ultimately, guess what? They had to. The market does get justice. And then, of course, investors, we just talked about, they share the blame because they should have known what they're buying and not just totally trusted the rating agencies, and they didn't totally, many of them, and many of them did their due diligence, but nonetheless, there's a misunderstanding of price discovery. And of course, the rating agencies is our main example here. Too much volume, too much complexity in order to really say, wait a second. And not only that, but also some vested interest. The more deals we rate, the more money we make in fees. Probably not the best model, especially in a market that is this complex and has this kind of effect on the economy. In the next lesson, we're going to talk a little bit, try to talk a little bit more about housing prices and how that affects the economy overall. We need to get more into the area of, okay, now that we understand this, what's the fix, number one? But now that we understand this, how did this lead to a stock market going down 20% in a couple weeks? How did it lead to the layoffs and recessionary period that we could very well be in and be in deeply? How did that happen? And how does housing prices going up and down affect all this? And what's some potential solutions? So we'll start to talk about that in our next session.